Hello, everyone. The Social Equity Committee for the City of Sonora is beginning at 5:03. First of all, can you hear me? I can't see any faces telling me that you can hear me. Uh-oh, that's a bad sign. Yes, okay, thanks, Megan. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. So the meeting was called to order at 5:03. Roll call. Is Mary Rose not going to be here? Okay, so would you do roll call, please, Chris?
Okay. Colette, Such,
I'm here.
Nikki Coleman,
Here.
Nathan,
Here.
Darren,
Present.
Mercedes,
She's here by, I see her on Zoom,
Yep.
but she's
And
muted.
Jim is absent.
Jim will be absent today. He may be able to sign in off and on. He's at work. Okay. So I just, a few announcements. One, I don't know if you were here last week or if you remember that, but today's meeting will be an hour and a half. We get to go till 5:30, which is very exciting. And the second thing before we start public comment, I just want to read a line from one of the resolutions that Nikki provided last week. I believe it was from Fresno. I can't remember which one, but this is what it says. We recognize the right to free speech and to gather, and we recognize that these constitutional freedoms from persecution do not grant freedom from the responsibility we have to each other. And I would like all of us to hold that thought during tonight's meeting. So at this point, I will open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment? Public comment must be, it can't be on items that are related to the resolutions, but anything else you'd like to say? I don't see public comment. Okay, I will open it up to public comment periodically throughout.
Why can't I?
I will open this up for public comment periodically throughout the meeting because we only really have one agenda item. Besides our committee member reports. And so just to include the public in our meeting, I will open it up probably 2 or 3 times during our evening. Thanks. Okay, so old business.
Maybe tell the new people that I haven't seen those names that they're going to be muted until we called on them.
Oh, you know what? I didn't say the raise your hand function. So Chris, I'm going to open it up to public comment. If you have a comment, you can raise your hand. I can never remember how you do this, and I can't tell on this screen. At the bottom of this, Chris, can you tell them how to raise their hand? I don't remember.
Yeah, on the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a raise your hand feature. So please click that if you would like to make a public comment. And it's *9 if you're on the phone, but I don't see anyone on the phone.
Okay, looks like no one wants to raise their hand. Okay, so also you are all muted and you will stay muted until we open it up again to public comment. Please, thanks. Okay, old business, discussion of and possible action of a resolution in support of racial justice. We have attachments this time from Placerville, Fresno, and Monterey's resolutions on racial and social justice. And then we have a few more in the packet from last week, which are Nevada City, Pacific Grove, a sample of National League of Cities equity, just a sort of a template for a resolution. And then the 2 resolutions that came from city council members last July that was because of these somewhat poorly written resolutions that this committee was founded. Okay, anyone want to talk about, oh, a few more things. I will keep notes on everyone's, if something resonates with anyone in a resolution, I will keep notes of that. It would be helpful if you could keep notes about the ones that also that are important to you, just in case my note taking is imperfect, which I think it is. And then we will gather those notes when we're finished reading all the resolutions that we choose to read. And then we will, as a group, take the suggestions that have been made. We'll make a decision about the ones that work, the ones that don't work, the ones that are repetitious, or just if we want to reword them. So anyone want to start about what resonated with them this week, or any new resolutions that anyone found?
Tell me what page that was on for the first statement you said there for the Fresno one.
I can tell you just a second.
Sorry.
I highlighted it.
There's 5 of them, so.
It's number 4 on page 3, and it's the Placerville one.
Oh, it's
Sorry,
Placerville?
it's Placerville.
That's why.
So it's
I'm looking
page
at Fresno.
3. Anyone else want to talk about, find anything that resonated, or?
I would like to just confirm, I think last week we approved, or we decided that the resolution would just be a resolution condemning racism. Is that still the title that we're thinking?
That is, but I think I said that I would like something written about equity, because I think inequity anywhere leads to inequity everywhere. But the focus is absolutely on racism. It's the focus. It was the intent. I don't know if anyone had the opportunity to watch the July meeting, but really the intent was that we write a resolution against racism. I would also probably ask that we include LGBTQ in there, but we haven't come to that yet. And there's one more thing that I would like to add is although our responsibility is the city, and we're talking about racism in the city, I think it's appropriately periodically to expand beyond the city, because racism that happens in our community, anywhere, or in our state, or in our country, absolutely creates terror to people of color. So it is not creating trauma just because it didn't happen in this little 5,000 person town. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I remember last week, I think one thing that we all agreed on, the very beginning of the Nevada City resolution. I think we all agreed that was a nice way to open it.
Yes.
The first line of Nevada City says, whereas the city of Nevada City would like to be known not just for the beauty of its historic homes, quaint shops standing out from the town center and its gold rush history, the city wishes to also honor the history of the Nisenan as the original peoples of this land. And then it kind of starts in the whereas. I think we could easily put in some modifications to reflect our local community and open it up that way.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely way to open the resolution. I mean, it was why it's why that resolution caught my eye. Although there are many things that it says that I liked. Although I think eventually I would like our resolution to be broader than this. I think this one stays pretty narrow.
Was when Mary Rose comes, was she going to type, or should I write in the meantime, or how should we do this?
We
Well, I
talked about
thought I would
whiteboard.
write.
Oh,
and-
perfect.
and-
Okay.
But I just asked that if there was something that mattered to someone, if they would make note of that, just in case I missed something.
Okay.
Because sometimes
fine.
when I write things, I also don't, I write it down, but it doesn't make sense to me. So,
So, hi, this is Mercedes. Hello. So as you all know, I missed the last two meetings for urgent family affairs. So I couldn't find online any notes about the last meeting. So I am just going to say a couple things that are important to me about writing the declaration. And I'm not going to follow the format yet, just some ideas. So I just like to highlight three key components for the declaration. One is being intentional about focusing on racial equity. Also concentrating on changing policies and systems and consistently incorporating meaningful community engagement into the work. So, and I believe that the reason that we need to focus on racial equity, it is because the rapid demographic shifts that are happening. And another point is to not confuse racial equity with racial equality.
Mhm.
yes.
I think that is a very important point because there has been several comments about that.
I'm writing this down, Mercedes. So you can keep talking if you,
Oh, thank you. And I
Like-
can send some of the notes later. So I also want to say that public and private policy and practices have been shaped by a framework steeped in racist beliefs and biases.
It's not on.
Yes, it is.
I am waiting.
How do we know that? Because segregation has been a constant, along with unfair treatment of tribal nations, as we could see here in our own county, and also unfair treatment of immigrants, as we could see historically here in Tuolumne, when the miners, when Mexican and from Chile miners were run off and were imposed higher taxes. So I think all these elements are important to consider. We need to name the tribal nation. We need to name the history with immigrants and other struggles that the LGBTQA+ community have endured in this county. However, I think it is really important also to say that there have been always counterbalances to discriminatory beliefs. In the history of this county, there has been also several initiatives to create some sense of belonging, inclusion, towards equity.
Mercedes, I'm just going to ask that you send that to me after the meeting, because when I write it down, I can tell that I'm losing some of your eloquence. So if you could send that to me, that would be really helpful.
I
And then
will,
I'll include it in my notes.
sure.
Mercedes, I agree with everything she said.
Yep.
A lot of those notes I shared, they were similar to what I wrote down as well, especially policies and systems, and also intentionally using equity instead of equality. The other note I made that I believe one of the resolutions had that kind of struck a chord with me because it happens in Sonora often, is the intolerance of racist or discriminatory language. And so I think it would be important to include that in our policy, to acknowledge that as well.
Question. So when you put that in, is that interpreted? Is it terminology? Is it, what are you gonna state where you take offense? Like, I'm not easily offended. You could pretty much call me everything in the book and I'm not offended, whereas there's some other people that could definitely take offense to anything. So when we say common wording, like obviously there's just like the 7 dirty words that you're not supposed to say on TV, there's common knowledge, but we don't have a common vocabulary that's gonna say the same thing of every terminology. I mean, people get offended for calling him and her now.
So just in the language for a resolution, not in writing policy, but for the sake of the resolution, just a statement from the city that racial discriminatory language is denounced.
Right.
Okay.
Simply
Broad
for the
term.
city to take a stand.
Broad
Yeah.
terminology. Got it.
I think one of the, for instance, in Placerville's resolution, they didn't include language, but there's a line that says, whereas the city denounces all acts and forms of hate, racism, intolerance, and violent extremism in Placerville, using a line similar to that and including racist and discriminatory language.
I'm good with everything there except for the extremism, because I don't really see the extremism here hit hard. I mean, we definitely have some crazy people, but they're always going to be crazy. They ain't going to pay attention to words on a piece of paper. But definitely, I mean, this is literally what I've been pushing the whole time. City of Sonora denounces any form of bigotry. This just
So
states that a little better.
one of the things that I am wondering, and this is not a statement, it's a wondering. It has to do with our attempt to write the declaration. So there was today or yesterday an article about the development of a hate group in Cholomi County. And what is really concerning is that it names some people that work either for Cholomi County or for other, for public organizations. So, and here is my wondering. So I wonder, how can we talk about the need or about the possibility that government employees would have to take implicit bias training because government employees are in a position of influencing constituents, are in a position of perpetuating inequities. So I asked to my colleagues, to my co-members of the Social Equity Committee, how could we talk about that with, and I want to add something else, we are the Social Equity Committee, and free speech have a place, but we need to consider also hate speech. So just wondering, I would love to hear some comments on that.
Question for you. Where can I find this write-up that you're talking about that was done so that I can read that?
Oh, okay. I will send you the link. It's in Medium.
You can catch that?
Medium is a publication.
Email me one so I can see that.
Yeah.
I try to be informed before I make, comments about it or anything. I don't know. A lot of things that are put out there can be false negatives, false stuff, or just vicious attacks. So before you say county people or, employees of the city, the state, the government are racist or anything like that, I mean, does this pertain to one person, the whole thing? I mean, there's a lot of questions. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'd like to read it before I weighed in on that.
I think it's a great comment, Darren. It's good to be informed first. And just a clarification, I didn't say racist people, I said bias.
And Mercedes, in one of our council social equity committee approved outcomes, it's community, review and possible racial sensitivity training for city staff and city council. So certainly implicit bias training, if the council accepts it, would fall under that. And as I have said many times during these months, implicit bias, I think, is if we can get people to understand implicit bias, we've really done an extraordinary job, just in ourselves. And I'm not throwing my husband under the bus. Is he on here? He's not, so I'll say it. No, I would say it if he was on here, but he's a lovely prince of a man. But we were just talking about something and he said something that was so extraordinarily biased. I'm just like, David, did you just hear what you said? And he was like stunned. He was stunned. And it was.
Now you gotta say it.
What? Oh, I'm not gonna say what he said. No,
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
gonna throw him under the bus that much. It's just, we all do it. I mean, my favorite line from Mark Plummer was, I'm more biased against people who say there, and there incorrectly, or right to there, and there incorrectly. I mean, we all have our own form of it. Some of it is more damaging than others, and some of it has huge consequences, lifetime consequences for people.
I do have a question for you. Colette, we were talking about the policy stuff. I would like to get some of that. It's, review and possible update of city policies, maybe get something like that so we can start to see what we're gonna maybe challenge, we don't even know what they are.
Right.
I think the chief's got his stuff up on a website, but there's many more circles in that cog wheel to find out what policies and what stuff it is that we won't even look at.
Right.
Again, I'm not informed of us making policy decision, but I think that we should have all that material to have an educated go at this.
I agree. I mean, as you probably remember, I wanted to do that before we actually set out to write the resolution because I thought it should inform the resolution. But
I think we should still.
But maybe it can be we can do it concurrently and just at least be reviewing those policies. It's just that it's hard. What I will say about the policy part, and we aren't really going to write policy for the city, but we will be reviewing policies with the lens of equity I think. I mean, because the city doesn't have policies that are racially motivated, obviously. Their policies all meet state and national standards. But it's just that when you start doing this work, you look at things a little bit differently and we see things that were not intended and we would have never seen 6 months ago. So I actually have all of those policies. I'd be happy to share them.
Right.
I think too, for the sake of writing the resolution, this is also not knowing what the existing policies say. this is also an opportunity for us to set the benchmark, right? So
Right.
it's up to us to put the language in the resolution to recommend what the city's stance should be. And then once that resolution is stated, to dive into policy to see what already exists, what disparities exist, and what opportunities there are. So I don't, while it will be important work for us to dive into those, I definitely think that we can set that standard and write that language before we actually have the data and the policy. Just opinion, but and on that note, in one of the things as this is coming up in exploring those policies, there was mention earlier of how to word that and where we can put that. And we had talked last meeting on the final pages at the end of the Fresno resolution. The one thing that I really liked
Yes.
after the now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Fresno, there are, and this is, I'm looking on page 3 and 4 of the Fresno resolution. There are those actionable steps. So all the whereases before kind of paint the picture, but it's the sort of the meat on the bone is after the now therefore be it resolved. And there's actionable items where they're specifically talking about what they're going to do to hold themselves accountable. And I liked that. It feels really transparent. It's very community driven. They're talking about working with other local agencies that are doing the work too. So there's that partnership. One of the first things they say is to call on all communities to courageously work together towards healing and recovery. And then they kind of go into how they will address that. But I really liked those steps. I think that might be an area where we talk about, working with our city officials and city employees on exploring opportunity, or, however we want to word that. But I liked that, the way that they wrote that in sort of an actionable way.
Right. And I also just sort of, as we write this, sort of think about what the action would be to, and there isn't going to be an action for each whereas. Some of them are just
Mhm.
kind of thoughts. But I think, and knowing that we can't tell the city, we're not giving the city direction, but but the council can approve this
Mhm.
or not. But I
Yeah.
like it, so that it's not just going out into being put in a frame and hung on a wall.
Right. I like your comment, Nikki. Yeah, I think it's a very clear in the page 3 and 4, the 1, 2, 3, 4 items are really clear. And one interesting thing about Fresno Declaration is that, as they mention in the document, the Asian American community is the main community there. So they spell out who they are: the Hmong, the Japanese, the Mandarin, the Chinese, etc. So I think that if we take a little step back, and before going to the actionable items, probably we need to name some of the communities that we need to name here in Tuolumne, and not only the communities, but what is really the issue we are observing with the kaput. That, of course, we haven't done a survey, we haven't looked at all the data, but we know some things, right? So with what we know, what are we naming? What the problem is? Where do we start?
I really like that suggestion too. It feels really considerate. I think there are feelings from many people of color that live in Sonora that because they're a minority, they're not seen. And so that feels like a good way to acknowledge Mercedes. I like that. One other note that I wrote down that we haven't talked about is tone, the tone of our language and the tone of our resolution. There's obviously a lot of direct language in a lot of the resolutions that are already made, but I'd like to be mindful when we are talking about things like implicit bias, for instance. That can be a triggering word for some, and sometimes a painful word. And acknowledging maybe the fact that, we recognize that your implicit bias is something that we all have, and that doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't, I don't know how we would word that, but I want to retain our audience, I guess, in this resolution. I don't want to be exclusive. And so kind of using tone and language that is unifying and positive, I think is important too.
I agree. I mean, I think implicit bias certainly needs to be in there, but
Mhm.
I think part of it is owning it in ourselves.
Mhm.
And that doesn't soften it enough for some. I mean, I don't think we can write a meaningful resolution that is not going to trigger some people. That should certainly be our. We should aspire to that, but I don't want it to be watered down
Yeah, I agree.
at all.
Yeah, one of the things I was to say is ask everyone here, are you guys easily offended? Give your normal answer, probably not. Are you worried about offending other people? With your normal everyday talk, that's where everybody tailoring this to every single person's individual. There's a lot of people on here that snap, not on here, but around, that snap over the smallest little things you're gonna offend. You can't tailor everything for every single person individual.
You can't, but I think that there's an argument to be made to really work to not be offensive. I mean, there's a difference between not offending people and being offensive. And I think it's critical. I mean, certainly we want the council to adopt this, and we want the city to have it to stop. We want the city to be proud of this, and we're not there. We can't be offensive, and I mean, we can't personally be offensive, and our language can't be offensive. But knowing that this is hard work and these are hard, writing this resolution is not easy, and to write a meaningful resolution is really not easy. And
What's
All
more, sorry, not to cut you ahead, sorry.
it's just important that we are mindful of offense and not paralyzed by it.
I'm
Okay.
just thinking there's a few people that get on here every time that we don't mention one or two things, and they definitely blast us about not including certain aspects of it. And those people, no matter what we write, are not going to be happy the way it came out. There wasn't enough of this, there was too much of that. So I think when we do a big portion of this, which I agree with a lot of the things we should definitely look at, there's a lot of language that some of these people are going to be not happy with. They're going to take flack. They're going to get on here. They're going to talk a bunch of mess. And it's something we see all the time. People aren't happy, but I don't want to dumb down or water down anything as well. I want to be straight to the point with a lot of our talking. With the words come out, there's a lot we can change to accommodate, but that accommodation also sacrifices point.
Right. Well, and
I just
think
like to offer something, and I would like to offer that we are mindful when speaking about the community input. I believe that any community input should be respected,
Mhm.
and that we, as members of the committee, we don't need to criticize that. And the other point I want to make is that for us, for members of the Equity Committee, and also for the community that is attending our meetings, to try to be curious, to turn to curiosity when you don't know something, when I don't know something.
Mhm.
So, we don't know everything, and we will be corrected sometimes, right? We will be connected. So instead being offended, just listen to that and just try to figure out. Maybe we said something that was wrong, or maybe we didn't know, and it is okay. So if we model that, I am sure that we will be able to have meaningful conversations.
Nathan, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just had a couple of principles that as I approach these resolutions that I think are important values. I don't know if right now is the time to elaborate on them or
Sure.
not. Well, one is I think as we're writing a resolution, and if we want it to be something that our city as a whole can accept, I think we need to avoid naming political groups. I think it's the Pacific Grove resolution names the organization Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And I think we would all agree that the statement, do Black Lives Matter? Yes, they do. But that is also a slogan and a political organization. And if you go to their website, and I think they've since scrubbed it, they have a lot of values that I think with which a great many people disagree. So to include, whether it's left or right, a political organization, naming a political organization in a resolution, I don't think that's appropriate. So that's one. The other one is, and I don't know which resolution this is because it's not named, but it's dated July 6, 2020 -A.
That was mine.
Okay, so the one thing is I get concerned about maybe the feeling of an accusation. It says we believe to answer this time with silence is to be complicit. And I guess it depends what that means, because if let's say there's a shooting or something with law enforcement, or there's some event that was caused or sparked by a racial event, I think silence is wisdom, because we need to wait and see what's unfolding, what are the facts of the case, rather than just jumping on, this is what the headlines say, this is what my camp says, this is what your camp. Let's sit back and listen and let the evidence unfold itself. And so I think that, we have to be careful with those kind of accusations. So just two more. Let's see, also resolution, the same one that says A. There's a line on the bottom which names the police department, and it talks about excessive force. And I think if you're gonna name the police, I think we should also use part of the resolution that is in resolution number B, where it says the city of Sonora applauds and thanks the police department. So I think that if we're going to call them out for excessive force, I think that there's no other group of people that hates excessive force more than the police. They hate it when that happens, because the officer who just goes along, does his or her job, you never hear about them. But if we're going to name the excessive force, then I think maybe it might be appropriate to also applaud their hard work and everything they put up with.
Can I just butt in?
Sure.
I am not naming the police department here. It says,
No,
we
it's an
condemn
image.
the use of any and all forms of excessive force and support our police department's mission, pledging to carry out their duties.
It sounds like a correlation. This is what I was talking to you about.
Well,
when I
but
talked
but
from
read
to
it
me.
more carefully. It's not.
No, I know.
So I'll correct the language.
Yeah, the
but
interpretation that to me, it sounded like you're comparing police in this form and we support them, but we don't want them to do that.
No.
It's the correlation of input that we
Right, but
take
if you
on, not.
if you read it carefully, it's not what I'm saying. So I will correct that language, but if we want this to matter to people who have been victims of racial violence or racial or hate, when we start adding all this stuff that tiptoes around it, I think we've lost the whole point.
Are we doing this because our police force has a problem?
No,
Then why even
but
add them? I think when we talked, my biggest thing was, why even talk about the police department? Why not the parks? Why not Parks and Rec? Why not the fire department? Why isn't everybody listed in here, anything? That's one of the things that I was talking to you about when we had a conversation, was what do the police matter, any part of that in a resolution form? Not that we can't look at the policies, not that we can't look at all these different things to digest. It's just when you said it and worded it like that, I didn't like either one that referred to the police. There's no reason they should get praise for doing their job. That's what they signed on to do. And there's nothing that your correlation kind of puts to me that maybe they do a bad job and that we should, only when they do a good job, idolize it. You know, that's what I take interpretation. I haven't talked to Nathan one day outside of this meeting, so obviously his interpretation is similar to mine. So there's got to be people that are having that interpretation. Can't be
Right,
just-
but I just would ask you to read that carefully and see that that's actually not what, I am not accusing this police department of using excessive force. I would never put that in a resolution here.
I don't think you are.
I don't think
I'm
I-
only saying that if we're going to bring up the police, if you look at the resolution B, and I don't know who wrote it.
Mark,
Okay, so yeah, Councilman Plummer wrote that one. He takes a note to applaud them for their service. And I'm simply saying that if we're gonna bring them in and we have a resolution against excessive force, maybe we should also applaud their hard work and what they have to put up with. But that's
well,
just
and
one
it
opinion.
also, but it also
Colette.
says, we support our police department's mission pledging to carry out their duties through compassion, dignity, equality, and to every individual. And I applaud that's their mission. And I think that they really work to, anyhow.
Let me ask a quick
So
question.
Colette, I wonder,
Yeah.
you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that you will be giving time to the public for
Yeah.
comment. I wonder if might be time, it's like 4:44.
Give me
Okay.
1 second to ask there. We got an extra half hour today, Mercedes. So my question on that is, when you wrote that, I know that you probably took a lot of interpretations for other people, but that's also your opinion, just like Mark wrote his, and he took interpretations from other people, but that's also his opinion. It's not a group of us 6 sitting down and telling you our concerns of what we interpret this word and verbiage from. I don't want to seem like I'm attacking you, but when I read that, do I think words changing it would alter an interpretation? Possibly. I'll give you that. And maybe that's not what your goal was, but in the quick glance, what most people do, and you hook, line, and sinker them in, that first thought process for me is you're comparing excessive force police and the police department's good. And that's what I'm just trying to say, not necessarily.
Well, that is not my understanding. I hear what Darren and Nathan said, but that is not my understanding at all. So I think that we will have to leave it there for a moment. And I would insist, Colette, that if this is a good time, maybe for
Yeah.
public comment.
Yet, I just wanted Nathan to be able to finish he hasn't finished his, so Nathan,
I just had one more.
I know.
It's about hate speech, and I get a little concerned when we start throwing around that, because that can almost be applied to anything. It can be applied to a philosophy with which we disagree. And so I always think it's good in a resolution like this to state simultaneously that, you know, hate speech, yes, is bad, but also we have First Amendment rights, and to connect those together, because we do have the right. There are things that many people believe that are longstanding beliefs that certain people will view as hateful. And we have to be careful when we throw around that word. And I'm not saying anyone here is throwing it around, but I will say that it is thrown around frequently.
I agree, and when I hear First Amendment rights, when it comes to racial equality,
Mhm.
I think First Amendment rights are abused with hate speech.
Okay.
And the Jews will not replace us. They have every right to say that that's hate speech. And so whenever someone wants to include First Amendment rights in a resolution about racism, I get a little bit nervous.
Sure.
And want to talk about, there are limits to that.
The First Amendment is more than just speech, though.
I know, well, but the right, I understand that, but I'm just
Protest is-
talking about
This
resolutions.
correlated from a protest. I think that when we isolate the First Amendment and speech, it's two different things there. You can't take the other parts of that and just toss it aside.
I understand. I mean, it's the thing that I read from I think it was the Placerville thing about the right to assembly and the right to, I mean, for me, the most important thing in First Amendment rights is not speech.
The things you're speaking are dead right. I mean, there's moral things you shouldn't say because it's morally wrong, but you can still say them because you have that. Once we start tiptoeing, like you said, to that, you're gonna try to say
Right.
that because I can't say If I wanted to, and now I would never do it, if I wanted to say a racially motivated word, you're saying I can't do that. That's where a lot of people are gonna go. If you only told me I could have Pepsi in my fridge at home, I'm gonna go buy Coke because you don't tell me.
And I think that's the misconception with the resolution. We are writing a resolution to interpret the city's stand, right? People are going to do whatever they want. But this is the city's stance on hate speech and racism. And that's up to each person's interpretation. But it goes back to, again, being
Goodness.
silent is being complicit. I hear what you're saying, Nathan, that when there is a crime, or as the example you stated, a police shooting, that you need to take some time and put your pieces together before you react, for sure. But we're not talking about a crime. We're talking about systemic racism that has been historically proven throughout our society and our nation's history. And so that's a little bit bigger than one individual crime. I think the thing that we need to ask ourselves, and looking at the example we're just talking about, we condemn the use of any and all forms of excessive force. That there is no language in that is placing blame. And I think any of our police would agree with that. Excessive force is condemned, right? We're not blaming anyone. We're just saying we condemn this. And I don't know anyone that would say it shouldn't be condemned. We're not saying it's happening. We're not saying that it's a problem in Sonora. We're saying that from this point forward, from the day this resolution is written forward, this is the city's stance on it. And that's
Well
a
said.
big difference between placing blame.
So I would like to open this up to public comment. If you would like to speak on the resolution, we just limit your time to 30 minutes. I mean, excuse 30 minutes. Go Karen. No, to
Karen's
3
got the
minutes.
floor.
Sorry.
So your first public comment is from Karen Wood.
Oh, man.
I would just like to show support for the 3 things that Mercedes listed when she began her talking tonight. And I would also like to really push for not only having a resolution that condemns racism, but one that commits to build a racially and socially equitable community. I think we need to have language about moving forward. If we just condemn racism, it's a piece of paper that can more easily be set aside. But if we commit to build something, then it's ongoing work that I feel needs to happen in this community as everywhere else. And so I would like to see both of that language included in the title. Thank you.
John's got his hand up.
I believe John, where'd he go? Oh, Latore, sorry. His name shifted down the line. You're muted there,
You're
sir.
muted. Hang on a second. Can you unmute, John?
John, did you want to speak?
Yeah, he's trying to unmute
Oh.
himself. Just click the, there you
Okay.
go, sir. There you go.
Can you hear me? Thank you.
Hi,
This is
John.
This is my first committee meeting attendance. I'm happy to be here. And when I read through the agenda packet, I don't think I found the proposed resolution that you're talking about. Is that right?
Correct.
Can I answer that?
So
you
yeah,
need to.
I can, as the clerk, so the proposed resolutions were agendized 2 previous meetings, the last 2 previous meetings as part of the packet. These were new resolutions that we were to consider, and that's why they're attached. And I believe they're also on our website too, right? Those proposed resolutions?
No, I tried to find them today on the way in. I couldn't
Okay.
find them, or the Nevada City one.
So sorry about that, but yes, they were on the last 2 agenda items because this is an ongoing old business topic. And so these are the new items that the committee asked to incorporate into the agenda.
Now, right now, are you referring to the 3 resolutions from 3 other cities?
There's more than that now. There's one from last meeting that we had from Nevada City and a couple others. Then there should be two from today. 2 or 3 from today's agenda.
So is there a place where all of the proposed documents are gathered into one document for all of us to consider?
So they're spread amongst different meetings, and we can put those all together on the website for everyone, but they're agendized as such because at different times we were talking about different resolutions. So for the last 2 meetings, we were just talking about a specific 4 resolutions, the 2 council member resolutions, and I believe Nevada City and Pacific Grove. Last meeting, it was brought up to include Fresno, Placerville, and
Monterey.
We also had the
and
city.
Monterey. So those were included in this agenda's packet, but we can make sure that the other ones are put just specifically on the website, but they are included in previous city council agendas, or excuse me, social equity committee agendas.
We can't find those online. That's what I was looking for. And also the League of Cities one was in there as well.
Oh, it's not, the agendas aren't on there?
No, they're not
No,
posted. I
because
looked.
there was no audio, maybe that's why it's not up there. I don't know. Or the agenda should still be up
But the
there.
agenda should still be
I
there.
don't know.
I didn't find them.
I didn't look. I don't know.
Okay. We will make sure those get posted as soon as possible.
Thank
Sorry,
you. May
John.
I ask one more question about the process in front of us? Is this committee in these meetings proposing to take all of those disparate documents and combine them into one document that the committee will then recommend that the city council adopt?
We can address that after you're done with your line of questioning, I think.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Can I answer that?
So you can, so just so you know, John, so generally public comment is not to ask questions. Generally you just make public comment, but because we apologize for not having the additional resolutions posted, I'll let council member such address that.
John, what we're doing is just reading all these documents. Everyone can bring resolutions from other cities that they found forward. We're just taking the lines that resonate with us, and then we'll take all of that information and see what should be included in a resolution, see if it should be reworded, see what we like, see what we don't as a group. And we will write one resolution from that. It's just getting ideas from other cities. And also getting ideas certainly from all of you, from the public. We want everyone's input on this. So.
And I
That's how it
apologize,
works.
we just changed to a new electronic agenda management system for this meeting. So we're still kind of getting all the kinks out of all the agenda posting with that. But we'll make sure we get those agendas posted.
Okay, Megan.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Megan Mills is your next public speaker. I am so.
Hi, can I be heard?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for hearing me. I would like to say thank you for the extended time period for this meeting. The hour and a half at least can catch some of the people who get off work after 5 for that period. And I really appreciate that extended time frame and would ask that more be provided in the future if possible. I think this is a really important conversation, and I'm so glad to see people engaged in the material and looking at it and having mostly respectful dialogue about it. I think there really needs to be broader representation on the Social Equity Committee so that it's not a committee of primarily white people and primarily men who are examining these issues, because those of us with privilege have a very hard time seeing our privilege unless we make an intentional effort to look at it. So a white person is not going to experience racism or see racism or be aware of racism unless they're looking for that, unless they're able to put their privilege or understand their place and their privilege and know that racism exists because people of color are saying it exists. It does exist. This country was built upon it. So I really would ask that any future questions take this into consideration, and that better representation of the people who this committee is to serve is present on the committee. For example, someone from the LGBTQIA+ community, another person of color, a person maybe with a disability, a mental health or a physical health challenge. I would really like to see more representation so that more diverse views can be represented on the committee. And I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan.
Your next public speaker is Pablo Lopez.
Hi, Pablo.
Hi. So I think there's two ideas that are really good in some of the other packets that you guys provided, right? One of them is about denouncing all acts and forms of hate, racism, intolerance, and violent extremism. I think that's fantastic. And the second is recognizing that the right of all to free speech and to gather is not the same as freedom from or it doesn't grant freedom from the responsibility of standing that, right? I think given today the release of Sabine Tischler's journalistic a bomb that she dropped, I guess, this deep look at Patriots of Gold Country, as an American nationalist hate group where members freely share racial slurs, neo-Nazi iconography, anti-Semitic conspiracies, queerphobic fear-mongering, calls for violence, and targeting harassments towards residents of Tolman County. Shows that there has to be certain consequences, especially for people who work, at the state, county, or city level who are sharing these things, right? I think the idea that you have people from police departments, the Sheriff Conservation Center, the Tuolumne County Community Development Department, Department of Public Works, from the Asset Recorder Tuolumne County, from the Tuolumne County Health and Human Services, from the Tuolumne County Superior Court, from the Columbia Elementary School, right? From the Soulsville Elementary School, from the cafeteria of Somerville Elementary School, right? You have these people who are actively participating in, this very troubling, hate speech. And there are laws that say, okay, you can have free speech, but if that free speech is hate speech, there has to be consequences, right? So hate speech is very clear in these, right? So I think there has to be that, right? Hate speech is one of the key factors that plagues Tuolumne County. And I mean, the document that's being released is very thorough, right? You have a list of names. I'm not going to publicly out everybody, but it's easily accessible for everybody. It's just important. Thank you.
I do. So actually, I'm going to address that even though I know I'm not supposed to.
Well, hold
but-
on just a second, Darren. We
Public
can't
comment.
address public comment at this
Gotcha.
time. We need to make sure the public. If anyone else at this time would like to address public comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature or dial *9, but I don't think anybody is on a landline at this point or a phone line at this time. So at this time, public comment does end.
So I'd like to address a little bit because I'm going to murder this name. Sabina, is that right?
Sabine.
Sabine. So Sabine actually called me. I spent about an hour and a half on the phone talking about what the group she was looking at and talking. Sorry, I don't know preference there. What they were talking about. Some of it was, the call was, hey, you're on this group. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Well, you were. Like, okay, I get invited to 50 groups a month. I'm on a new tomato Bible one where we grow tomatoes, but I didn't know anything about it. And I was told about how there's racial stuff and there's bigot stuff. And that's really disheartening. And that's what I said. But I also said, you have to take a look at the other side of the street as well, where Indivisible sits on their group and they have all this hate speech. And I know because people have showed them talking mess about me. So you can come out and say something against whatever it is on the other side, but you can't take a look at the hypocrisy on its own. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't agree with anything that's on that page. I don't know that page. It's not available to go look at. I haven't read their article yet, so I don't know what the representation was, the comments that I gave, but it was a very good talk. It was very eye-understanding, very eye-opening. Some of the things that are being portrayed on there are very radical racism things. I'm told. I didn't see it. So is that right? No, it's morally wrong, but there's moral good and moral evil in the world. And if you're only going to focus on the other side of the street and not your own, then that's hypocrisy, because there's people on their side that are giving death threats to me, giving all this stuff of talking stuff about coming after me. And I said, I welcome it. Bring it on. But you can't take that interpretation that this person is writing and say that that's the narrative of everything. I haven't read it yet. I actually asked to get sent a copy when it was done, but it wasn't yet. But the same thing goes on the other side of the street, but everyone turns a blind eye when people are bagging on me and talking crap in their little meetings, which I get to see, I literally see them. We've had discussions about one of them talking about coming after me, right? So that's acceptable, but when we're gonna go and paint this group over here, which I can't remember the name of the group and I'm not gonna list it, but literally 2 minutes before I got this message from this person, Sabine, to ask me questions, I got a message from another person. And it's like, then it was a deleted account. I didn't even get to really read it and figure out what it was. It was a deleted, blocked, everything. And I'm like, what's going on here? The game system of right and left, your gang, my gang, that kind of stuff has to stop. We all have to be partisan. We all have to come together. We all have to sit down and actually talk about real world issues. And everybody's scared to do that because they're afraid of offending people. I offend everybody. Let's not kid ourselves. But I'm willing to sit down with every single person. Pablo on here, I've sat down with. Karen, I've sat down with. A few people in here I've sat down with and talked with, and we don't agree on the same things, but the overall goals are pretty close to the same. We don't think racism should exist, but it does. You know, but I see these. My grandma asked me about a letter to the editor that someone wrote about me. Now I haven't read it because I'm not going to. I don't care. But it was a very defaming letter to the editor that went out about me. And it's like, okay, cool. They have their rights. But should I be offended and do that? Should I say, hey, the left group and this group, that gang came after me? No, no. Come at me and ask me why you wrote that stuff or why you're hearing this stuff. Ask about opinions and do that. This write-up, I'm actually really intrigued to read about, and I haven't got to see it yet. But the conversation that we had, me and Sabine, am I right?
Sabine.
Sabine.
Yeah.
Was a very good conversation. And I said, hey, you probably know my reputation of me being an a-hole. And I've heard about your reputation. Throw that out the window and let's have a general conversation and get down and sit and talk like two individual people. And it was really good. But that super far, I'm ready to attack the right because the right's evil and racist and all that. You can't bring everybody into that group and say that. There's people that are on there because they have friends. Like I'm on 4x4 sites. I go out with my Can-Am. I'm on those trail sites. I'm on everything you can possibly think of. Is someone out there going to possibly post something negative and say that? Yeah,
Throw
but
it
it
in,
doesn't mean
please.
that I'm part of that group. It just
Right.
means I'm in the group where everybody else is.
And I think I'm hearing what you're saying, Darren, but I think the difference is you're using the word attack. Sabine hasn't attacked anyone. She's posted things that have really happened. That's it. She's shared those. There's a very different for people who have been physically attacked. There's a difference, right?
I'm
And
not saying
so-
she's wrong. Again, I don't know what reference
Yeah.
material she was asking about because I'm not part of that group, but somebody said I was. So I was very, but you know, calling me a racist is okay, but I can't call you one, you know, that's the kind of thing I'm getting at.
I don't think
don't
anyone's
that-
calling anyone a racist.
It's not,
But-
it's broad term. I'm giving broad strokes there. I'll give you that. But when you call me and you say I'm a conservative and I'm on this racially motivated page, that kind of leads the breadcrumbs down the aisle. But it's something that's not. Now, again, am I wrong about what's written? I don't know. I bet she's probably right. There probably is a lot of racist rhetoric that's put on the internet. It's the internet and it's social media. If that's where you get your news and that's where you care about other people talking and putting out their opinion, turn it off.
Well, in this day and age, when we have city employees who are putting out racial hate speech, the community deserves to know about that. And I think that's starting that conversation. Very different than a physical attack, right? But what I heard you say was, and I've known this about you since we've met. I mean, everyone on this committee is here because we are fighting to end racism in our community, and keeping that in mind, and that being our ultimate goal. We've all been craving data and craving actual experiences and actual substance of what is happening in this community. That article lets you know that. And that's all that is.
I haven't read it yet. Forward it to me.
I don't know the article. I'll read it.
I mean, I don't even know if my stuff went in there that we talked about, but I'd like to read it, so forward it to me.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Mercedes.
I got that we have a number of key phrases and key values and aspirations that we can include in the declaration. So what would be the next step? My understanding, and because I missed the last two meetings, as I said, is that not that we are going to copy from other declarations or resolutions, but we were just looking at them and looking at our own place and looking at what is happening in our own place, and then starting to compose something about our stance, about the city, how we envision the city to be more inclusive, how we envision the city to be more responding to any community member and any guest or any visitor, because we are a county that depends on tourism, right? So that was my understanding. Not that we don't need to focus right now in the format, but just to bringing together some of the key ideas. Is that true?
That's true.
That's how I understood it
Very.
too. And I was hoping we would have kind of as part of our chat about actual process. Mary Rose, we had at one meeting the easel. Might we be able to use that at our next meeting so we
Yes.
can start actually like visualizing
Yes.
Great idea.
kind of how we want to break this down? I think in all of our talks tonight, we're really starting to get some really good idea of the things that we want to say. And so now it's just a matter of actually putting the pen on the paper, and that might be a way for us to do that if we had the easel.
Do like pragmatic points and put it in and then try to figure out where it goes. I
Yeah.
wanted to come back to that inclusiveness that one of the members brought up. I don't know her name on the public. Yeah, the color representation. We had a discussion about that 2 weeks ago, me and Colette, and what happened to Sylvia and maybe bringing somebody in. Is that something we need to agendize so we can talk about?
It actually is being posted.
It's what? I'm sorry.
It's being posted.
Oh,
for
gotcha,
people to
okay.
Apply. I am going to look at all the, just so you know how I'm going to do that. I'm going to look at all the original applicants. And actually, who are not on this committee, obviously, currently, and I'll call all of them and and actually interview them. And then also it's being opened up to the public for more applications. And it will be a 3-week period. Hopefully, I will have made the decision to bring to the council at not the next council meeting, but the one after that. That's the time frame.
Copy that.
So yeah, that's how it's happening. Darren, did you have that? No, I mean, excuse me, Nathan. Excuse me. I just wrote down Darren. So,
Can I just say something, Colette?
Yeah.
Because I have to make sure that from a risk standpoint, we can't be accusing city employees of things because that will infringe upon personnel union stuff. I just want to make sure that if we're going to be talking about incidents out there, I need to be ensuring that I'm protecting my employees against any type of
Okay.
speech against them. They do have rights. They do have full processes to these rights. Obviously, you see the chief on the line today. So I just want to make sure we remind that we're not making accusations out there with any type of personnel process. There is documented processes within our city policies for that.
yeah, thanks.
We don't want to get sued.
I'm gonna jump back. I think the belonging portion of that for our community, and I've talked to Colette in personal conversation about doing, we could do something county day or, our culture, come downtown, do something, help the businesses, help the people and the businesses, without them, you guys are nothing. Without them, the city council doesn't make taxes. Without them, they don't have industry for tourism. We don't have that. And that was one of the things that I wanted to, belonging. I know that the Sikhs in Calaveras County did a giant potluck style stuff where they came out and they made huge amounts of food and everybody went and had the greatest time. And I think that besides the fact of thinking of budget, time constraints, traffic, I mean, there's all that stuff. That would be something where we got the whole community involved to come downtown. They already pretty much do for Christmas parade and they come out for Mother's Day parade. We've been two times now. We haven't got to have that. I'm sure a lot of people want to get out and see their friends and do that. And I get that COVID's a part of that, but that's something for the future to be able to think about. If we're going to do some belonging stuff and we're going to actually implement anything that's going to take place, having like a nice cultural day where everybody that lives here can come out and eat and drink and do that kind of stuff.
So Darren, I just want to make sure we didn't agendize this type of discussion. So I just want to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves. We're just still talking about resolution language. So any type of cultural events would have to be agendized for discussion.
I got another one here I'm going to bring up then because it was something somebody texted me. We talked about doing some cleanup for Chicken Ranch about their site that we talked about as secret. Can we bring that back up too so that we can get on that?
Agreed.
Yeah, I wanna get out there and I will take 2 days, 3 days, whatever it needs to show that we're serious about doing that.
Councilmember Such, are we under community member reports right now?
Can we go to community member reports? Is that
Yeah,
what
I
you're
just want to make sure we're following the agenda.
Yeah.
Because I don't
Okay.
want to be directing work
Yeah.
right now when we're still on the old business of the resolution talk at this point.
Gotcha.
Right. Okay, you want to go, let's go to community member reports. Just because I looked at you doesn't mean you have to start.
Where the heck is that at?
I'm happy to start. Does anyone else have anything to report?
I don't. I did, but I'm not coming up with it right now.
10 minutes after we close.
Exactly.
So while I don't want it to be the focus of our work, I do feel I owe it to our community to address the newspaper article that was in the paper last week.
So I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
Can't do it.
You are a representative of the city in this regard, and I don't want to conflict the city at this point.
Okay.
So I would prefer as the representative of the city to not comment on it because it is an active litigation. And right now you are acting in the capacity of the city council. So I
Okay.
just want to make sure we're not conflicting or getting involved in litigation at this point.
Okay.
That was on advice of council.
Okay, I would like to share a couple things then.
Okay.
So last week I was invited by the Miwok tribal to a memorial of one of the workers in the social service area that passed. And it was a beautiful community service. We had dinner together. There were some cultural practices, and it was just a sense of belonging, a sense of community. I was honored to be there. Another thing I would like to also share is that I was invited to a meeting with the community group that are working on some projects in the community. And also it was a very meaningful, nurturing meeting. The members of that group are really interested in reaching out to the community and to hear stories about marginalization, about inequity, and they are doing a great job reaching out, making a plan, and trying to connect with different circles in the community. And that is all what I would have to share. Thank you.
I'd be down to do that. Do we go to their group and do that, Mercedes, or do they come, just call me on the phone? Like, I know I'm not the marginalized they're looking for, but I'm definitely
Say
marginalized.
that again, Darren. Say that
Sorry.
again. Sorry, I didn't know that you were speaking to me directly.
So is that something that we're gonna go to their meeting and talk about, or is that something that they're gonna be able to talk to individually on a Zoom meeting or something like that? I'm not exactly the marginalized group that they're probably looking for, but I'm definitely, I grew up poor, white trash. That didn't come from nothing. I've seen some stuff around here that's been absolutely crazy. I know one person who's watched it happen. So, I'd like to hear what they have to say as well. Maybe not on this capacity, but
Thank you, Darren. And I really appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate that you are willing to step forward. And I am sure that if they want, they will invite you. I am sure they are very inclusive.
You're gonna say something? Councilmember Sanders?
Yeah. So if we wanted to include community stories here, if people who have experienced not necessarily a crime, but perhaps a crime, or have experienced racism in the community, is there a way that we can agendize something like that where the community can speak of their experience? And maybe you don't, maybe you want to speak to city attorneys before you
Yeah, I
answer
would like to
that.
speak to the city attorneys because the last thing, I mean, we know this is the social equity committee to talk about inclusion of all races and ethnicities. From a city administrator perspective, I would never want us to get in a situation in which we are calling out other members of the community and creating more of a division. And so I need to talk to the city attorneys on how that would play out. So let me talk to the city attorneys about that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we could,
guidelines around rhetoric a little bit there.
well, because you also have to understand, like we talked about personnel. I can't have people calling out personnel. The personnel have rights and all of those kind of things. And at the same time, I don't know, it's up to
Store business names, things like that. I get what you're saying.
exactly. It would
Can be
put
complex.
the city in a predicament from a risk standpoint.
Respectfully having a story about a location where something happened that no one lists a name, a person, a cause, and it happened at this place doesn't need to be said.
Yeah.
And I mean, I agree. If we could do, and I certainly think that that's important. I just think
Workshop.
that for many people in this community, we have to figure out a way for them to really believe that racism is real. And we're losing. I mean, we're not getting that message out.
It is real. It happens. I've seen it.
I know, but a lot of people don't believe it.
So the thing that I do agree with you is a lot of people just want to be heard. A lot of people just want to be heard. And a lot of that people get shut down. And that's why I've always said I'm open for everybody's ear, because the minute you don't want to hear from somebody, they double down or triple down and they become that activist, crazy person. And if you just have a simple conversation with somebody, pretty good understanding of people. Some people just want to vent. Some people want to have their story understood. Some people really want change in a story. There's a lot of things that I think if we had a workshop or something like that, where it could be respectful for people not to say a name, a person, a
So
place.
again, I'll need to confer with risk and attorney, because the last thing I want to do is put the city in any type of risk in that
Gotcha.
situation. And I will be frank, I've talked to community members, county members about something of this nature, and they have brought up the fact about the creation of a division in that type of environment. So I just want to make sure, I'm going to talk to you and Jim separately about it, and then I will talk to the attorneys about it.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing is that we don't need to do everything. Probably having partners in the community. And so there are some work that can be done without the restrictions that naturally being under the city council has. So it's probably, and part of the strategy is developing partnerships.
Are we not allowed or allowed? I don't want to put it in that terms, but we're allowed to have private conversations with citizens about their stuff at any time, correct?
Yes.
As long as we're not here dropping the normal risk stuff.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's just to protect the city of any potential. The last thing I need is a business to get upset about a particular issue and then opening it up to any type of litigation liability
Copy,
or an individual member of the community.
copy. That's definitely should be rights. That's no question. Are we done?
So I'm just writing, sorry.
More public comment. This
I don't know
committee.
if this is in toward, but I wanted to make a comment, Councilmember Such, if you would allow me to.
Depends what it is.
Just, I just want to address, I heard from Megan Mills about having people on the committee that's not necessarily an inclusive representation. And I just want you to know that I think people forget that Mr. Morales here is of Hispanic descent, but also myself included. I'm a Peace Corps volunteer. I spent years in Africa, and my husband is African, and I'm also a tri-citizen. I'm a first-generation American. I'm a multi-citizen, and I just want to make sure that when we talk about white people, that there's a lot to the table that we bring as also in terms of inclusion and in terms of our perspectives of what has happened to us as well. I've been in many racist situations as well as a white person in other countries. So although I can't personally talk about any issues that I've experienced here in Tuolumne County, there are many stories out there from many different nationalities that have their stories as well. So I just want to make sure that we are including everybody as well. And I just wanted to make that known.
I'm gonna Karen Wood here. Where did white come from? We had a conversation. No, it was a good conversation that me and Karen had a couple weeks ago. Where did white come from? I don't know what I am. I'm probably Heinz 57, but I think I was born in, my heritage is Italy and France, but you call me white. To be honest with you, I'm a little more tan, except for in the arm, I'm really white, but
Not as
technically
white as I am.
I'm peach, but I don't like that terminology, and I hate to be that person on the soapbox. And there's probably a lot that we agree and don't agree on, but where did white come from? Are we saying white all the time? If you wanted to go back to Eastern European, all that stuff, you're breaking it all down, but it's always white. It's always the paperclip move. Stack everybody together. And then she said inclusiveness about representation. How does she know that any of us here aren't gay, LGBT, any of that stuff? I'm sure that you could guess, probably not, but I'm not going to make that assumption. The representation portion is we had 4 women, 2 men. We have a Hispanic man. I'm white. I'm going to guess white. That even though I hate that term. So we have 2 people here that are 1 male, 1 female that are predominantly white. Everybody else is not. So when we have the inclusion there, it is there. Maybe because we don't have Sylvia no more. Well, you guys already answered that question that you're going to look into bringing someone else on.
And I didn't mean to open it up. I just wanted to make sure that, there are many voices out there, many voices.
Okay. Nathan, Nikki. Mercedes.
The only thing I was going to say is that it's 5:26, and if there are gonna be public comments, it's only 4 minutes left.
Right. Okay, public comment. Anyone else have anything else to say?
So what public comment is this on?
What are we talking?
Committee reports.
Oh,
We generally don't take public comment
Oh.
on committee reports.
Give it
so
to
there can't just be
No.
straight any public comment about what we were just talking about. Sorry, you guys. I never will learn this. Sorry, Karen. And I think that's it.
Thank you for sharing that.
So I have a couple of questions for, I guess, Mary Rose. So Mary Rose, when I
Is it-
look at,
I'm sorry, Mercedes, did we agenda or did we adjourn or are we still
No.
going with the committee? The meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Mercedes, go ahead.
okay, so sometimes I want to find a document in the website. And I think that already a community member mentioned that. And is there any way to post there anything that has been reviewed by the Equity Committee?
So, and again, this is because we just switched recently, but
Okay.
the documents generally are on, let me check real fast as I'm looking.
Okay,
So what I will say, most for Brown Act governed committees, we generally don't post additional documentation outside of an agenda packet. So we have been posting additional items for this committee because we understand there's a lot of documentation that has been surrounding this committee. And we wanted to make sure it was easy access to the public to be able to see. So if I go to, hold on a second, to our Social Equity Committee webpage,
mhm,
and so we have informational items. And I noticed because we just switched those archived agendas, they should be, we'll get those posted on those agenda packets. We'll make sure that those archive agenda packets are posted there. But we also posted additional information for the public, such as the mission and vision statements, the value statement, the PowerPoints, and other things. What other items were you looking for? Were they attached specifically to the agendas?
Yeah, they were resolution.
so for example, I was looking for the conclusion of the work on values. Although there is the City of Sonora values statement, but there is not the document with
So-
what we provided. The same about the purpose statement.
So we can post those again, general meetings, general Brown Act government meetings, we just put things within an agenda packet. So if you remember from the value statement, the additional values are added on top of the Sonora value statement. So I will need to update the value statement, and that value
Okay.
statement is going to be posted within the city council website area. But we'll make sure that we have, like I said, the past agenda packets, and that value statement will be updated on the overall city council website.
Okay, and for example, for the purpose statement, is there the exercise we did with the grid with all the purposes, but there is not the conclusion, the one that was adopted.
So I will say we were putting the purpose statement on the agenda for a long time. So I can make sure that that gets posted to the website as well.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, so every like document that we create goes to city council, and then so that completed document lives in the city council? That's not what you just said?
No,
Oh,
no, I just said
it's
the city
not.
value statement because it becomes an inclusive part of the value statement. It's just, we'll have to post it here, and I apologize, it's just due to me kind of managing
Okay.
multiple city websites at this, web pages at
Yeah.
this time.
I just think all of the documents that this committee creates should be posted on the social equity site.
Yes,
in a
but
way
the
that
value
people can-
statement is not a social equity document, it's a city council document.
I know, but we worked on it, so it should be on the social. I mean, I get what
Yeah.
you're saying, but I just think it's, that makes it really tough for the public to find, because they're not going to know to look on the city council.
Mhm.
Sure.
So, okay,
Thank you, Mary Rose.
thanks.